Well, the latest edition of the AP poll is hot off the press, and one of the top 5 teams, Marquette, not top 5 anymore. They take a tumble down in the top 10. Still in there, though. That was after they lost to Creighton on Saturday. Rest of the top 5 at the time were all winners. Jerry Palm has the Golden Eagles on the 2 line in his latest edition of Bracketology. As you take a look at the new top 10, Houston remain the #1 team in the country, 26-3 alongside UConn and Purdue. You see UConn jumping up into second spot after their 30-point win and a Big East regular season title came on Sunday. And we talked about Marquette. They're down to 8. That's a drop of 3 places. Let's discuss the current lay of the landscape with bracketologist Jerry Palm and college basketball analyst Chip Patterson. Let's start with Marquette here. Monday, you just heard the news. They announced that last year's Big East Player of the Year, Tyler Kolek, out for at least the rest of the regular season with that oblique injury. He missed the loss to Creighton on Saturday. What does it mean for their seeding if they get blown out by UConn midweek here, Jerry?
Well, not really all that much. I mean, the way the committee deals with injured players is they will put a little more weight on what how the team played with the roster they're taking into the tournament. So it's not like a loss to UConn wouldn't count, even if it's a blowout. The blowout doesn't really matter. The selection process is not really margin influenced like the net and Ken Palm rankings are. So the margin doesn't really matter. If they lose to UConn, it's a loss that doesn't hurt you very much because they're a #1 seed. It would be more problematic if they lost the other game, but losing to UConn doesn't hurt you very much.
UConn and Xavier is set to come this week. Chip, how big is losing Colette for Marquette here from a positional standpoint as they get set for the conference tournament?
Well, I mean, he's the most important player on this team, but he is not necessarily unequivocally the only top-tier player. And that's why you want Tyler Kolek for the first weekend of the NCAA tournament so you don't have another early exit like you did a year ago. You want him to get this oblique right because you've got a steady hand in Cam Jones to be able to run the offense. I mean, Cam Jones had 23 points in 40 minutes in that loss to Creighton. And so you know he is at least going to be steady enough. Oso Ighodaro, another player who I would say is top tier for the Golden Eagles. He was sick and he missed that loss to the Jays. If he's back in the lineup, then Marquette should be able to still do a lot of what it wants to do, even with Kolek not on the floor. But I cannot stress this enough, following up on what Jerry said. This is a team that seeding-wise is in the same kind of realm, no matter what happens the rest of the way. With an oblique injury, you want to make sure there is zero re-aggravation until it's really going to count, and it's really going to count once we get into the big dance.
All right, let's stay in the Big East and talk Seton Hall. They were moved to first 4 out on Sunday, Jerry, alongside fellow conference foe Villanova, whom they play next. Is that a must-win game for both if they want in?
Yeah, it probably is because, you're running out of time here. For Seton Hall, they're now below 500 against the top 3 quadrants. And in fact, I've had them out of my bracket now for at least a couple of weeks, I think. They've been pushing to get in, but haven't made it in yet. So, Seton Hall has got to get this win to get back on level terms and just to get, some momentum going because they have, I think, DePaul also at the end of the year, and obviously you got to win that one. But Villanova needs it too. You've got a pile of teams in the Big East trying to play their way in. 1 or 2 may make it, but it's possible none of them do. Seton Hall and Villanova, but also St. John's and Providence. So it's a 4-car pileup behind UConn, Marquette, and Creighton in that league right now.
To that end, Chip, of those 2 teams, I'll ask you, which one do you think is most likely to get into the field, if any?
Based on the play and the team makeup, I'm going to go Seton Hall. I think that what we've got is actually the makeup of a team that could surprise some people in Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament. Kadary Richmond is the kind of player where everything runs through him. And the Pirates are not especially skilled, but they do a great job of being able to find a good shot, get to the line. And I could see the Pirates just turning a bunch of New York games into a fist fight. And maybe Shaheen Holloway is able to capture some of the magic that he has had in March before. Villanova is just wildly inconsistent. The reason they're in this position is because there is so much inconsistency with that resume. I feel like I know who Seton Hall is, and I have more faith in Kadary Richmond being able to put the team on his back and be able to go knock off a top dog. But hey, is going to start right here with beating Villanova and DePaul on your home court. Get a little bit of momentum heading into the conference tournament.
All right, let's go over to the Big Ten. Nebraska in the field as a 10 seed after they bounce back with an 11-point win versus Rutgers on Sunday. They finish against last place Michigan. Jerry, have Nebraska hit their ceiling in terms of the bracket?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, you have a conference tournament still ahead of you. Beating Michigan isn't going to really give them a lot of juice, but they can make a run in the conference tournament. And the thing about Nebraska is they're a home court hero. They haven't done very much off their home floor this year. Their best win, and this is actually a quad one win, at Kansas State, which is not a tournament team. They also won at Indiana, but really not a lot of glory off their home floor this year. And it would really be good for them in terms of seeding to get some decent wins off their home floor. Now, Michigan's not that. However, they can do that in the conference tournament. That's also off their home floor. So I think if Nebraska can make a little bit of hay in the Big Ten tournament, they've got some upward mobility in the bracket.
Let's stay with the Big Ten tournament there, Chip. How dangerous is this Nebraska team for you?
I think that the way that they've committed to defense here, Fred Hoiberg kind of adjusting his approach. You know, they've got players like Tom Aminga or Rink Mast who can, individually have pretty terrific performances. But I do think that what Jerry said is very important. You know, when I'm handicapping these games for Sportsline or the Early Edge, the home road splits between Nebraska, both in terms of win-loss, but also covering the spread, efficiency, all of it is just wildly different. So they've got to find a way to bring that Pinnacle Bank energy into the conference tournament just so that they don't have a sweaty Selection Sunday.
Big Ten tournament beginning March 13th on CBS. All right, over in the Pac-12, bubble team Colorado doing everything they can to get into the field. They were among Jerry's last four in on the strength of a four-game win streak. They have a final quad one opportunity versus Oregon. Does a win there put them in the bracket?
No, it's not enough to guarantee safety. Oregon's probably not a tournament team. They're at least in the picture at the moment, but that's an important game for both teams. But yeah, winning at Oregon, sure, that helps. But what they really need to do is beat Arizona. That's the only, or maybe Washington State. Those are really the only teams in the league where you could get a little bit of juice going up the bracket. And unfortunately, that's just the way of the Pac-12 this year. It's like, I mean, it's almost a joke that the only way Arizona can get a quad one win is to beat themselves. It's just not been a strong enough league this year for Colorado to feel safe about anything except the automatic bid, unless they happen to beat Arizona before that could happen.
Chip, how would you describe this Tad Boyle team at this point?
Veteran-led, trying to recapture the glory of old. What I mean by that is that you've got Tristan Da Silva, a senior, who was a true freshman on that team in 2021 that was a 5 seed. You've got KJ Simpson. He's the bus driver, a junior. He came in the year after that. Luke O'Brien, another starter, who is a senior, who is a true freshman on that team. You know, this Colorado group coached by Tad Boyle, we always think that they're dangerous, but like Jerry mentioned, the Pac-12 strength has been so down that even being a top half team in the Pac-12 does not mean you've got a clear path to the tournament. The Buffs are a very strong, solid, veteran-led team, and I think they've taken the lessons they've learned of falling short, and that's what's leading to this strong play down the stretch. So I'm excited to see if they're going to be able to close it out.
4-seed Duke are at NC State tonight, and then they have North Carolina on Saturday to finish their season. 2 quad one games here, Jerry. If Duke win out, where does that put them?
You know, it's funny. You call them 2 quad one games, and like I like to say, not all quad one wins are the same. There's a very big difference between beating NC State and beating North Carolina, because NC State's not going anywhere this year, and North Carolina is a potential #1 seed. So if Duke can win both of these games, yeah, there's some upward mobility in the bracket. I don't know if they can get to a 2 just because the competition for that line is really stiff. But certainly a 3 and maybe even a high 3 where they might get some kind of geographic preference is their ceiling if they do well here. And if they win the ACC tournament, maybe then they could get a 2.
Chip, Duke are 5.5-point favorites tonight on the road. What does that tell you about the letdown potential here?
Letdown potential? Duke is 1-3 in its last 4 bus rides to Raleigh to play NC State. this is a game that when it's played at NC State has gone the Wolfpack's way more than the Blue Devils. And that includes a 20-plus point loss last year for the Blue Devils and 3 years ago for the Blue Devils. Like, letdown is absolutely there with the sandwich spot between Virginia and North Carolina. But Duke playing at NC State is dangerous at any time in the schedule. Look for DJ Horn, the prolific point guard, scoring guard for NC State, to really try to take this game over, inject some life into the building. And don't forget, in terms of what happened on the weekend, NC State might have a little bit more of an edge. It is going to be mad that it blew a 10-point lead at North Carolina. I mean, Duke was already making its Saturday evening plans before halftime of a runaway 25-point win against Virginia. Dangerous, dangerous spot for the Blue Devils. Interested to see how John Shire's group responds.
NC State 0-3 versus AP top 25 teams this season. But as Chip said, this could be a tight one here. All right, over in the Big 12, Baylor looking to avenge an earlier loss this season when they face Texas in Waco tonight. How firm are Baylor on the two line at this point, Jerry?
Well, I don't know if I would say they're firm, but they have a great season going. They passed Kansas recently to get onto that two line, but it's very competitive. That two line is really competitive. You've got teams competing to try and get to the top, and you've got teams competing to hold on to that spot. So, and with the Big 12 as strong as it's been, I think there's going to be at least one Big 12 team on that two line. There could be two, but I don't think that's going to get decided until we get into the conference tournament and see how these teams play there.
And you take a look at the resume there, 7-7 in quad one, best win versus Auburn, worst net loss against Kansas State. Chip, how big is this game for Baylor in terms of staying consistent as the conference tournament nears?
Yeah, they're trying to fix the defensive side of the ball. They have instituted a new 1-3-1 zone since they played Texas the first time to fix what was just absolutely bleeding out defensively. And I think that Scott Drew knows, having won a national championship, that if you want to be a contender, and a 2 seed is a contender for the national championship, that they need to be better defensively. So they've gotten enough good wins that they're going to have a good seed. But for me to take Baylor seriously as a contender to make a deep run and contend for a national championship, they've got to improve. And so they've put in this new defense since the last time Texas played. And Texas, you know, whether you're talking about Tyrese Hunter or Max Asmus or Dylan Dessou, Dylan Mitchell, like, they are a very, very dangerous team with a lot of versatile offensive weapons. So as I'm breaking this down and as I'm getting ready to do winners and losers at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time here on CBS Sports HQ, my notebook is going to be all about how Baylor defends Texas, because that's going to tell us a lot about how Baylor would defend other top teams if they get deep into the tournament.
All right, well, conference tournaments begin today. The ASUN first out of the gate. Jerry, what are the bracket implications for the ASUN champion?
Well, you know, the ASUN has had an okay year. I mean, Eastern Kentucky is their leader. Eastern Kentucky's on track to be a 16 seed. It's most likely going to be a 16 seed, whoever the champion is. But my memory of Eastern Kentucky this year was they played at Purdue and sent out a kid shorter than 6 foot to jump against Zach Edey. That's one of the funniest moments of the season for me. But and they could play Purdue again if they actually make the tournament as the ASUN champion. But the ASUN champion looks like a likely 16 seed.
Chip, when you look at the ASUN, I mean, where do they rank in terms of, you know, the rest of the field for you?
Let's just talk about entertainment value, because that's where I think we might be in the top 5, because the ASUN has D offenses that have been great in conference play. Why? Because the defenses have all been awful. As a conference, in conference games, the Atlantic Sun among all conferences is #1 in offensive efficiency, #1 in three-point percentage, #1 in not turning it over. Again, the defense isn't good. And #3 in effective field goal percentage. So as we see Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast get things started, buckle up and get ready for a bunch of wild games with a lot of offense and not a lot of defense. And what better way for us to get conference championship season started than some unpredictable games between teams that don't play any D?
I can't tell you how excited the newsroom was that we were going to get some Dunk City viz into the show today. College basketball analyst Chip Patterson, bracketologist Jerry Palm joining us here to discuss brackets and buckets. Jerry's updating bracketology daily as needed over on CBSSports.com. They're recapping the weekend over on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish walking you through all the big results and what they mean. Download and follow where you get your podcast, or scan that QR code to listen to that weekend recap right now.